Hi everyone, this is Mrs. Tevis-Finn recording from Franklin. It is Sunday night. I hope you guys had a great Thanksgiving vacation, and we'll be doing this screencast in room 119 together, so feel free to call me over if you have any questions. So let's begin this part 4 for imperialism. Follow along in your guided notes. It should say a war on two fronts. And so let's review from the previous screencast the causes of the Spanish-American War. So the first one, remember, was the Cuban Rebellion, Cuba Libre. The role of the American press, remember, yellow journalism. The Delome letter insulting our president. And lastly, the explosion of the USS Maine. So I've opened up this last presentation with this button called Remember the Maine. So this was kind of a battle cry of, remember, intense nationalism or jingoism to push us into this war against Spain. It is a very unique war. It does not last long, and it's also a war on two fronts. So let's look at the map. So what do I mean by two fronts? So guys, the Spanish Empire that's crumbling, remember, we have to try to deal with Cuba, and they also have colonies in Asia, and so we also send our fleet to the Philippines. So our fleet is spread out in two oceans. Alright, so now be ready to fill in your notes. So the U.S. Navy was ready for this war with Spain. Its North Atlantic Fleet blockaded Cuba. And so the head of the fleet is pictured here. He was based in Hong Kong, Commodore George Dewey. He was ordered to attack the Spanish fleet in the Philippines. Noted in parentheses, make sure you guys know that the Philippines was a Spanish colony, and so the U.S. wanted to block them from heading to Cuba. Next, on May 1st of 1898, Dewey's squadron entered Manila Bay in the Philippines. We had 4 American warships. We destroyed all 8 of the Spanish warships. So next, please fill in that this took McKinley by surprise. We were not ready to send troops. So the U.S. quickly assembled 20,000 troops to sail from San Francisco. I have pictured here American soldiers fighting near Manila in the Philippines. And I want you guys to think about what kind of things do you think our soldiers are facing in this type of climate. So in this country, we need allies. And so George Dewey contacts Emilio Aguinaldo. Fill his name in there. He is a famous Filipino revolutionary leader who had led an unsuccessful revolt against the Spanish. So he becomes our point person. So Emilio then leads another attack to take control of most of the islands at the same time that the U.S. troops seized Manila, which is the capital. So it was a coordinated effort to flank the Spanish. Alright guys, the next, please fill in that the Spanish in Cuba were not equipped to fight. You guys can fill in that disease and fighting for months against rebels had worn them out. They had old ships and poorly trained soldiers. And though this is a modern picture, I thought you guys should be reminded of malaria. This is one of the diseases that plagued the Spanish troops and the American troops. So just look at some of the symptoms of malaria. Not fun. And so let's keep going on, guys. If the U.S. could defeat the Spanish Navy, it would not be able to resupply its troops in Cuba. Pictured here is one of our old warships from that time, docked in Tampa, Florida. Alright guys, I have pictured here one of our camps. They were not sanitary. Food came in cans, like the meat would already be rotten, full of worms. Diseases spread, like malaria, which I mentioned before, but also typhoid fever and yellow fever. So guys, just finish up that section for the U.S. Put down they were not prepared for war. The Army lacked resources to train and equip their volunteers. Epidemics broke out in training camps, and many died of disease, far more than from battle. Yet here they come, the U.S. troops landing in Cuba. Pictured here is Teddy Roosevelt with his Rough Riders. So guys, this next section, June 14th, 1898, fill out 17,000 troops landed east of Santiago. One group was known as the Rough Riders. Second in command was Teddy. It was an eclectic mix of cowboys, Native Americans, and miners. Next, I want you guys to check out the geography of Santiago Harbor. So please fill in, guys. The Spanish fleet was protected by Santiago Harbor. And so our plan was to drive the Spanish into the harbor where our warships were waiting to trap them. There were several battles, one being the Battle of San Juan Hill. I have here shown the trenches of our troops waiting for the Spanish. And so July 1st, American troops attacked the village of El Cane, northeast of Santiago, while another force attacked San Juan Hill. You guys can spell it there and fill it in, assisted by Teddy's men. And it caused the Spanish to panic and evacuate, where our ships sank every single one of their vessels. Shown here is a sketch of the surrendering of the Spanish. So guys, fill out 2 weeks later, Spain surrenders, and the U.S. occupies both Cuba and Puerto Rico. And so this peace treaty between Spain and the U.S. leads to debate over what to do with these newly acquired lands. Fill in that Cuba is supposed to get independence. Spain agreed to for the U.S. to annex both Guam and Puerto Rico. So fill that in there. And the question is, what to do about the Philippines? Should we become just like Spain, or let the people rule themselves? Guys, I have here, our military base here in the Philippines. So just think about the strategic importance of the Philippines for the United States. And so the debate has pros and cons. For pro, Philippines would provide the U.S. with another military base, also a place to rest on the way to China, for trade, but also a large new market for our goods. I'm going to go through Anglo-Saxonism as well. But, on the con side, go to the second page, guys, where it says industrialists like Carnegie. He argued that the cost of an empire far outweighed economic benefits, so too costly. Unionists like Samuel Gompers from the AFL worried that cheap labor, Filipino labor, would hurt American wages. And Jane Addams and Mark Twain argued that it violated American principles. I'd like you guys to listen to this quote. It's from the bottom of that first page of notes. Surely this war has not been a grab for empire, but a heroic effort to free the oppressed and to teach millions of ignorant, debased human beings, thus freed, how to live. And here is a political cartoon. This would be a symbol of British, and here is symbol of Uncle Sam carrying on their backs, just trying to look at the characterization of the conquered peoples and look at the golden top mountain of civilization. Alright guys, so just please make one comment on that quote and about this political cartoon as well. Just put that in the margin of your guided notes. And to top it off, going back and forth between the two sides, President McKinley does decide to annex the Philippines, so fill that in. He decided to annex. And his quote is that we could not leave them to themselves. They were unfit for self-government. We had to take them, educate them, uplift and civilize and Christianize them. That's from our president. Pictured here is the Treaty of Paris. The U.S. paid $20 million for the Philippines. And although Cuba was promised its independence, we attached the Platt Amendment, so fill this in, to their new constitution, making Cuba our protectorate. It was not repealed until 1934. Please check out the branding. I believe this is McKinley. It kind of looks like him, but he's branding a Cuban here with the United States. So guys, please remember what a protectorate is. It's pretty much like a colony, though they do have a little bit more of their own government, but they pretty much have to run everything by us first. Alright, so let's go on to Puerto Rico. So governing Puerto Rico, the Foraker Act, so guys can fill it in that first line, provided for elected legislature, So they had some democracy, but it called for a governor to be appointed, by us. And so Puerto Ricans were not American citizens, and they did not possess constitutional rights. I do have pictured here the Puerto Rican Supreme Court, which they were allowed to have. Alright, so eventually Puerto Ricans were granted citizenship and the right to elect their own governor. But the debate, you guys can fill that in, the debate continues today. I have a modern picture in here. This is the flag of Puerto Rico. Whether Puerto Rico should become a U.S. state, the 51st, or its own country. Today, guys, it is still a self-governing commonwealth of the United States. So, guys, put down your position there in your notes for what you think should happen to Puerto Rico. And lastly, the Philippine-American War. So, guys, Emilio Aguinaldo rallied his rebels and attacked the U.S., after this Treaty of Paris. He called the decision to annex a violent and aggressive seizure. So fill in seizure for his quote. The Philippine-American War lasted 3 years. Over 100,000 troops were sent. 4,300 of our troops died from disease and combat, as well as an estimated 50,000 to upwards of 200,000 Filipinos perished. We used the brutal tactics that we had condemned from Spain. So pictured here are the re-concentration camps. So you guys can fill in that we separate the rebels from villages in re-concentration camps where many die from disease and starvation. I did find a picture of these camps. If you guys search this, I was able to come up with one of the pictures of the Filipinos being herded up and sent away. And this may be the most awesome picture. You guys remember President Taft and his bathtub. So before he was president, this should give you a little background. He was the first governor of the Philippines. So he's pictured here on a water buffalo. But to calm hostility, right, with the Philippines, the U.S. Governor William Taft brought many reforms. He brought education, he fixed transportation, and he certainly modernized the health care to eradicate things like cholera and smallpox. His health reforms pictured here. Here is the Governor Taft with the Filipinos. So interesting date, July 4th, 1902, there is the surrender. So what happens is Emilio is captured, then his guerrillas surrender. We eventually allowed Filipinos greater role in their government, similar to Puerto Rico, but it was not until 1946 that independence was granted. Alright, so we have finished our unit on imperialism. After you guys do these notes, I'd like you to get with your groups and I'll have some review questions for you. This is Mrs. Tevis-Finn signing off.